Hello everyone and welcome to game 1 in a series between Millennium Stephano versus WhiteRa here on IPL's version of Daybreak. This is going to be a long series. I know some of you guys out there know exactly which tournament it is from. If you guys don't, well, I'm sure by now you can read the comments. I don't want to get caught up in trying to get everything written down and just get the game for you going. First thing you'll notice is perhaps I am a little bit louder. There were some complaints that my voice was a little bit too soft, so I did up my voice just a little bit more. And for all of you guys who say I do a great job in terms of casting, thank you. For those of you guys who say you do a great job and don't change, I don't know if I can agree with that. I'm always trying to change. I'm always trying to get better for you guys. So I can't listen to that advice. I am going to try to get better, and hopefully you guys will just join me along for the ride. WhiteRa opening up with a Forge fast expansion pylon down here on the low ground. We'll see what's going to go down in this series and in this matchup. This promises to be a very, very long casting session for me today. I saw the number of games. I'm like, you know what? I know some of you guys out there really like watching my casts. I thank all 5,000-6,000 of you who consistently come out. And I wish I had 30,000 more, and then I would be able to sponsor my own tournaments, perhaps. We'll see what happens in this series so far. We can see that the probe did take a look around, didn't see a proxy hatchery or a hatchery fast expansion, and that's because Stephano has already placed down his spawning pool. So an earlier spawning pool by Stephano, and we'll see how WhiteRa responds. If WhiteRa still goes for his Nexus first, which is a high possibility, Stephano may just try and respond by going for another hatchery down over here at the 3 o'clock position. You now see a probe making its way down to the low ground. It looks like it will be a Nexus first, followed by a Forge. And this Forge fast expansion is now well underway. Hatchery down over here doesn't look like it's going to be stopped at all. WhiteRa still wandering around with this probe. We'll see where he's going to go with this probe, as Stephano is really, really smart and now positioning up his overlords all across the map. Now, this map is very, very nice for overlords. There are a number of untraversable terrains that are up on high ground, meaning that overlords can park themselves there and not get shot down until Colossi are teched. I believe there is another spot right here. There's even a little display board to show where exactly to park those overlords, as the overlord of Stephano now going to make his way over to the natural expansion, see that a Nexus is down, and now we know that no one will be attacking each other, at least not for the next 5 minutes or so. WhiteRa sitting at 18/18 food, now getting into 19/26. A gateway is being placed down alongside a photon cannon. That front door should be ready and ready to wall off against any Zergling harassment. Meanwhile, we see a probe attempting to run away from a Zergling. The Zergling will be able to shoo that away as the third hatchery has been placed down. So 3 hatcheries coming in so far, and Stephano should be able to get up to 3 bases rather quickly. Now, the ball is still in WhiteRa's court in trying to determine what exactly he wants to do. He could try to just just work her up, chrono boost out as many probes as possible and do a 2-base timing, and that would work out fairly well, especially if the Zerg player tries to, or perhaps over drones a bit much. If you can get up to Colossi, 3 to 4 Colossi, well before Stephano is able, or the Zerg player is able to get up his tier 2 and get up his Spire, he's not going to have the Corruptors to deal with those Colossi, and being able to use sentries early on, very, very effective. We'll see what's going to go down here. A probe does come around, see Stephano's third base. We still don't see a tech to tier 3 as of yet. I believe the metabolic boost has not even been started at this time, so no gas down whatsoever. And Stephano really going heavy on minerals, and we'll see whether or not he's going to be successful. Zealots are now making a move over here to the 3 o'clock expansion location. There is going to be 1 queen. Drones now need to be trained up rather quickly. The queen now needs to perhaps get off a couple more injects in order to have a lot of close reinforcements. There's the inject, the Zergling now backing away here. There is 1 probe even joining on this fight, as the Zealots are now trying to go after the queen. The queen, however, now on the far side, the Zealots now getting some damage onto the hatchery. Instead, the Zealots backing around and see how much damage can be dealt. More and more Zerglings are coming down. The Zerglings, however, have a little bit of ways to travel, especially when you consider that there is no creep connecting these two. One Zealot in a bit of trouble, now being forced to run away. Nice split by WhiteRa there, and now WhiteRa positioning his one Zealot in between the two cracks there, trying to minimize the amount of damage by minimizing the surface area. The Zealots now positioning themselves in a very nice location. That one Zealot, however, will get surrounded here in just a moment as the Zealots now go back to back. They will be fighting against all of these Zerglings. And I like this play by WhiteRa, even though he may have lost a lot more units in terms of overall resources. He was able to force a lot of Zerglings instead of drones. And anytime you can prevent a Zerg player from training a drone, is essentially a drone killed, as his economy is not going to be nearly that strong. We are teching the tier 2 now. We are going into the extractor. Double extractors, we are going into an evolution chamber and a roach warren. Meanwhile, WhiteRa sitting on only about 44 harvesters now compared to 58 drones. So Stephano quickly macroing back up, and now Stephano at a 78 to 51 food advantage with 10 more drones coming in. So apparently those 4 zealots didn't do enough to really slow down the economy of Stephano. As Stephano will be getting up on 3 bases, and WhiteRa now being forced to get his 3rd base and hoping that it can be established well enough in time before those roaches and perhaps another tier 2 unit joins in on that fight. Zerglings now making their way down. There is one probe right for the taking, but the probe does not get taken out. The probe now needs to back off. Perhaps we will see some gateways or even some photon cannons here to try to protect this 3rd base. Stephano now sitting comfortably on 3 bases. It doesn't look like he's going to try to take a 4th, but he still doesn't have a macro hatch, which is a little bit of a surprise at this point. A lot of Zerg players want the additional larva. They want that macro hatch just because roaches and Zerglings early in the game, they're not very larva efficient. It takes 1 larva to train up 2 Zerglings. It takes 1 larva to train up a Mutalisk, and it takes 1 larva to train up an Ultralisk. So that is why I say it's not very larva efficient, as WhiteRa going to lose 1 Stalker very easily. The Roaches do not have the Glio reconstitution just quite yet, but they cannot engage here. WhiteRa losing another sentry, and Stephano just chasing after and dealing terrible, terrible damage here. Stephano may be able to finish this game well before it gets started. Stephano with just this small push here, and now getting up another 15 drones. He's going to have about a 30 drone advantage in just a second. As you see now, 10 more drones being trained once more, and I believe Stephano is just pushing and pushing back. WhiteRa needs to be very, very careful. There's only 2 photon cannons here up against a whole bunch of roaches. That is a lot of damage to try to absorb, and now the force fields need to come in. 1 photon cannon quickly gets destroyed. The roaches now trying to turn back around, taking down the gateway. The gateway does absorb a bit of damage, but this is still not looking good. Stephano just timing this attack, but he does not have the level 1 weapons upgrade on those roaches. The roaches looking to take down this nexus, and if this nexus does fall, Stephano can simply back off and know that he has about a 100-second advantage over his opponent, as the roaches are now once again going after the very, very expensive sentries. Those sentries, very low hit points, very high cost, but Stephano's attack will be countered here. And WhiteRa now down to 2 bases with not much to show for it. 93 harvesters compared to 57. About a 30% or 40% difference in terms of probes versus drones, and that definitely doesn't look good. But Stephano still doesn't have that large of an army. He only has Zerglings now left over, 1275. And if there is a strong counterattack coming in from WhiteRa, the food advantage that Stephano has sits mostly in workers. 28 food advantage in workers. And if you take a look at the overall food count, 105 versus 157. More and more units still being trained, up to 85 drones now with 13. And with now 9 more drones still being trained, we are going to be getting quickly into that 100 count as Roaches and Stalkers continue to battle it out here. Roaches battling up against some Stalkers. Immortals are in the back. Immortals very effective with that range of 6, able to deal a lot of damage and now push all of these Zerglings back once more. WhiteRa needs to be cost effective with his units, and Immortals are definitely the units to go for if your opponent is going for mass Roach. The roaches, however, do not have any weapons upgrade and just will be getting armor upgrades. Those immortals will be dealing 55 damage per attack through the armor, maybe 54, 53 against those roaches, but still enough to 3-shot them. And those roaches are going to start to fall very, very quickly. Zerglings, Stephano now getting up to 160, 170, and now this is the moment of truth for Stephano. Whether or not he can actually punish his opponent once he gets up to 200 food. If he's able to punish his opponent when he has the significant food advantage, then he can trade much more efficiently since his army is larger. Behind that, he should have more queens, more production to be able to replace those units, replace all of those roaches with Zerglings and get them across the map. You now see up to 195 Stephano with a 60 food advantage looking to finish off WhiteRa. But WhiteRa being very bold in his attack now, moving out with these stalkers and cleaning up a couple creep tumors. There is a hatchery now being placed down at what I'll call this this gimpy base here. Only 6 mineral patches as opposed to the full 8, but there is 1 rich Vespian geyser, and now it looks like WhiteRa taking that base as well on his side of the map. Overlords are in position. There is overlords off to the north. There is still 1 overlord hiding here, so Stephano pretty much knows exactly what WhiteRa is doing at the natural expansion, and this is something you got to be careful about, as you could easily place down a Nidus Worm here, and if you miss it in the middle of a battle, that could go very, very poorly for you. Warp Prism now being added. We are now getting into level 2 weapons upgrade, and the key question will be whether or not the claw attack upgrades is going to be enough. The main problem is that all the range upgrades have not been started yet. We are now going into 3-2 upgrades for those Zerglings, but for the Immortals, we are already at 2-1 upgrades, and those roaches don't benefit from those claw attack upgrades at all, and those Immortals will be able to deal a lot more damage as well. There are photon cannons here. Stalkers now making their way off to the north. Zerglings looking to clean up this pylon, as now roaches trying to make their way in. And what is Stephano doing? Stephano losing a whole bunch of roaches very needlessly, trading for 2 sentries, and that was a very bad move, but he is freeing up food going into Corruptors. Twilight Council now researching Blink. Very smart choice, as WhiteRa knows that he needs to be able to catch up to those units, and also going into a Stargate. 1 Void Ray is going to cause a lot of problems, as Void Rays move faster than Broodlords and also deal bonus damage to Broodlords. Zerglings continue to just swarm into the center portion of the map. Infestors are here as well. 11 Infestors. The Infestors do have a good amount of energy on them, and we'll see whether or not those fungal growth are going to be enough. 5 Broodlords now being added once more. WhiteRa just wandering back and forth with these units. We see another move coming out by Stephano. Stephano almost supply blocked, and here we go. Zerglings now running straight inside the mineral line, taking down some probes. Stalkers are now backing off over here, as the Zerglings are all hitting up 3 separate bases at once. Zerglings now trying to take down probes over here. It looks like they have made their way into the main base as well as the natural expansion, as WhiteRa is forced to deal with all of these Zerglings in different locations. The Zerglings are on hold position so that they're trying to minimize how close they are to these photon cannons. However, the Zerglings do deal a lot of damage to these probes. If the probes do happen to just press by, the Zerglings, however, getting finished off by those 2 photon cannons here. Meanwhile, a Warp Prism does have a bit of a drop. Broodlords quickly make short work of that. Infested Terrans going to shoot down that Warp Prism unable to move and will get destroyed. Zerglings, however, able to cancel the top left nexus, as the Zerglings now make their way back inside this gimpy outside base. Colossus able to finish off many of those units once more, as Stephano is now even, but he still has about 7,000 more resources than his opponent. He should be able to dump in a lot of Zerglings and just continue to funnel them across the map, as we now see more and more spine crawlers being added. Up to 166 food now. We are getting some spine crawlers off here. The spine crawlers will slow down those colossi and those stalkers. Spine crawlers do not cost any food and are fairly efficient, as we are now also going into a mothership. High Templars now being added, and this is going to be a game versus high tech versus compared against this Broodlord army. Now the Broodlord, perhaps if we see some Archons, those Archons would be able to jump inside the toilet and then deal damage to those Broodlords while they stacked. However, at the same time, the Infestors could try to land a fungal growth off on those units as they're coming out of the toilet. And if they come out and if they get hit with too many fungal growths while they're clustered together, they may get stuck like that for a little bit of time. Pneumatized Carapace also being added. We are going into 10 more drones. And it looks like Stephano now trying to retrain up those drones after building up a whole bunch of spine crawlers on the front door. You can see the spine crawlers just lining themselves up all across the map, hoping to prevent any sort of aggression as the mothership is now on the move. And still we have Stephano with a significant mineral advantage in the bank. But it doesn't matter what's in the bank as long as your units don't die. And we'll see if WhiteRa with his 3-1 upgrades will be able to finish off a lot of this. There's a fungal growth. And now Infested Terrans, are they going to be able to perhaps get another fungal growth? Yes, they are. Broodlords now making their way in. And this is going to be a very, very bad sight as the Infested Terrans are not going to be able to catch up. Stalkers now making their way back around. A lot of Broodlings trying to find their targets, unable to do so as a mothership is nearby and cloaking many of those friendly units. 10 Broodlords going off to the top, 6 Broodlords going off to the south. For that is what? How many Broodlords is that? Simple math question, can't even figure it out. 16 Broodlords on the map for now, and we'll see how this game will unfold. So far, both of these players have not really lost that much. Losses still beneath 10,000 at this point, as more and more spine crawlers still being built. 2 more hatcheries being added once more. This macro hatch has been completed. Is this a macro hatch or is that just a ball of units? That is just a ball of units. And here we go, mothership Infestors. And here's the battle. There's a vortex, and the Infestors are going to perhaps try to jump inside. Spine crawlers are immune to this, as the spine crawlers are now trying to just figure out what's going to go on. A couple of Archons now jump inside the toilet as well. Infested Terrans are here. More and more Archons now coming in. And here we go. The Archons taking so much damage. And wow, WhiteRa with an Archon toilet dealing massive damage against all of those Infestors, as Stephano now replenishing his army with a whole bunch of Zerglings and Roaches. Stephano at 200 food, but it is still a large army trying to be trained. The mothership dealing so much damage. The Stalkers now making their way in. Corruptors are trying to back off. Archons dealing bonus damage even against the buildings as they are biological. And still so much damage to be had. WhiteRa still doesn't have Psystorm, so that one High Templar just very, very far out in front. Instead, feedbacking a couple of Overseers, almost able to take a couple down here. We now have Corruptors going after the mothership. The mothership looks like it will finally fall, and now this Stalker and Immortal army have been revealed, but the damage is still being dealt. Colossi being added. WhiteRa seen it at 197. You can see more Zerglings and Roaches. Level 2 weapons upgrade now just getting started compared to the level 3 weapons upgrade of the Stalkers, Colossi, and Archons with Immortals as well. And I believe Stephano will have to say GG, but Zerglings now catching a lot of units in transit. WhiteRa losing a couple Archons there, may lose a Colossus as well, as the units are now backing off. WhiteRa playing this beautifully, being slow and calculating, taking down one base at a time, and still dealing more and more damage. All of these spine crawlers back over here will get destroyed. We are going into some more Corruptors. Where is the Greater Spire? The Greater Spire is built over here. Interesting position for Stephano, making sure that he did not lose all that tech. Roaches are now looking to push in at one of the bases, perhaps deal some damage and fight while he can. Zealots are reinforcing as the Roaches are now finishing off a lot of probes. In come Colossi, Stalkers, Archons, Immortals, and I believe all of these Greater Spires will the Greater Spire will get taken down alongside the Spire. There is no tech to tier 3 once more. Hive tech has been destroyed, and once the Greater Spire goes, the only remnants on the field will be those 6 Broodlords that are currently hatching. Or, sorry, 9 Broodlords in total. So we're going to have 9 Broodlords against this Stalker army that has Blink. Corruptors are going to try to engage. Broodlings are now swarming their way in, but the Broodlords getting caught by some Stalkers. WhiteRa deciding not to engage here, especially with that many Broodlings on the field. The Broodlings dealing 7 damage per attack. And now the Broodlords still trying to make their way and chase after the units. Colossi cleaning up the expansion down here. once more, as WhiteRa may be able to take down this expansion, as it is trying to tech the tier 2. More and more broodlings still chasing units. The spine crawlers are trying to reposition themselves in the correct location. Zerglings now darting to the south side of the field, as these stalkers and 2 colossi look to finish off this expansion, but it will not be enough. I do not believe so. No, the Zerglings all getting toasted already. 1 colossi down, another colossi down. The spine crawlers are uprooting and now going to reroot themselves in a better defensive position, as Stephano is now essentially down to one full base on the bottom right hand side. His economic advantage is now turned into a deficit. 50 probes versus 35 drones, and it was really that archon toilet with the vortex. So really well played. We'll see what WhiteRa does. WhiteRa now getting up to about 200 food once more. He's gonna be engaging. Archons are in position. Spine crawler now trying to back off. All of these spine crawlers will root themselves, as the corruptors are now joining in, and the archons really just getting in a lot of damage. You can see WhiteRa now with 13 archons on the field, dealing 47 damage per attack, attacking about once every 1 3/4 of a second. 47 damage per attack against everything that Stephano has. Broodlords now making a very nice retreat, trying to figure out where they can go. Stephano really trying to rebuild his army, perhaps trying to figure out what exactly happened, as now WhiteRa goes into Brood War style and now getting some carriers. The carriers are going to be the last ditch effort to try to push Stephano out. Carriers are very effective units. Once you have the necessary upgrades, and it looks as though the graviton catapult is being researched as well. Mothership now making its way, as the vortex and the mass recall should be coming in momentarily. WhiteRa really enjoying the use of his mothership lately, and that mothership should perhaps move forward and engage again. Stephano doesn't have that many spore crawlers. I don't see that many overseers, and now stalkers are cleaning up some very, very easy to take out creep tumors. Creep tumors falling one at a time. There is only 5 spine crawlers here, roaches, infestors, and broodlords. The attack should be coming in soon, but with that many archons, those archons will be able to deal so much damage so quickly that I believe all the broodlords will simply just be destroyed. A new base now being established over here, just perhaps for some gas. You can see all the overlords are still parked far, far away on the top right hand side, and WhiteRa really trying to play it safe. Carriers continuing to train up more and more units. 1 carrier in this group. No weapons upgrade though, so that is a bit of a surprise. Perhaps weapons upgrade would make a sizable difference, especially since those interceptors do attack very quickly for a small amount of damage, and then armor really plays in heavily. Stalkers still wandering around. Carriers going to attack that front door. There is just colossi, carriers, and a mothership, and I guess this is the epitome of splash damage if you do not consider the immortals or the carrier. And WhiteRa may simply be able to just move and attack with this large group of units. If he does move and attack, all of these units most likely will try to come down and reinforce this location, which would be exactly what WhiteRa is hoping for, as WhiteRa would then perhaps try to attack the main base. Worker kill count, there were still some roaches off over here. The roaches hiding behind the mineral line. No true kills. Worker kill count 47 to 54. Harvester count 26 probes to 40 drones. So right now WhiteRa has a much larger army just because he doesn't have that many workers. Stalkers are in position. We'll see what's going to happen over here. There's a fungal growth, perhaps trying to see some units, and now the archons making their way over. Broodlords now dropping in onto all those archons, and those archons getting chain fungal growth. This is really, really bad news for them. They need to back off. WhiteRa needs to be very careful. He has a lot of units as the Stalkers now once again blink away. Infested Terrans now trying to make another move. There is still a Mothership. The Mothership going to take some very superficial damage there as they continue to make move with this force. Carriers, Immortals, Archons. There's the toilet. Archons are going to jump inside the Vortex. I believe, yes, the Mothership is immune to the Vortex, unable to jump inside herself, as the Stalkers are now just continuing this push. The Vortex still going. Out comes all of the units, and there is the well played by Stephano. So Stephano losing game 1 here from IPL. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed game 1 in this series.